estate and kind of how the real estate market is impacted by what's going on. And so first and foremost, anytime you have a conflict like this, it causes fear. It causes fear, but it also causes massive volatility. You'll see the real estate market get some impact from it because, people buying their home. And when I say people buying their home, I don't mean the investors or, naturally the people buying commercial real estate aren't as impacted. But I mean people, regular people buying their house, their first time home or their second home, selling their home, buying their home. Okay. So the first thing that impacts in something like this is the fear that kicks in from a war that's going on. The volatility in the financial markets and that up and down causes people to look at the money that they have invested, the money in their 401k, their IRA, the money they have in stocks, and they see it, declining. Okay, they see the downward portion of that swinging downward, and it causes them to step back and be fearful and oftentimes maybe continue sitting on the sidelines or cancel the deal, or in some rare circumstances, it causes them not to have enough reserves to be able to close or to be able to have the down payment because there's enough of a decline in their asset situation that causes problems. So anytime there is something that causes fear or volatility, it does have an impact on real estate, specifically for those buyers that are buying their own home to live in. So what we've experienced in the first year of the Trump administration, much more so than his first 4 years, is a massive amount of volatility. You've got, you've had the tariff escalation, you've had the Iran war, we've had multiple trade things that have caused, upswings and downswings in the market. There's been stuff about AI that's caused some obstacles. All of those things slow the real estate market because buying a home is very emotional for most people. So when they see this and experience this, their emotion kicks in and their fear kicks in. And one thing I've learned through all the years in this business is that the majority of home buyers are more driven by fear than they are excitement. So they're looking for a reason to walk away. It's the same thing that happens in the transaction itself. You're seeing right now record high cancellations of contract. And part of the reason for that is because, again, the housing market hasn't really recovered. We haven't seen a boom in real estate yet. We've had higher interest rates. And then, of course, you sprinkle on a little war on there, and it's got people a little bit concerned. So if they see something in their inspection report, they're already a little bit more afraid, and they run to safety, which is, back to their apartment or back to their mom's house or back to the house they're living in now that's cheaper, not the one they really want to be in. So whenever you have these situations and these escalations and conflicts and, trade disputes, all these things that drive down the stock market, it does impact real estate. And it causes that fear to kind of lead buyers. Now, what I want to talk about next, though, in that same token, you have the fear that kicks in from, the consumers. They're afraid. They don't want to act. They want to wait for this to get cleared up. But it's also pressing down on them financially because you're seeing gas prices rise, their expenses rise. Potentially, if this carries on for a while, we get back into a increasing inflation environment, and then you start to have problems with affordability even more so. So interest rates have been down at their 2 or 3 year low or 4 year low even, which is improving affordability. But if people's everyday costs start increasing because gas gets more expensive and, energy gets more expensive, that also has a negative impact. So in addition to emotional, there's the financial side of what happens when we have this conflict. But it's one of the beautiful parts about real estate that why I always encourage people to do what they can to push through that. We know most of these conflicts are short-lived in terms of their I call it fear and desperation, the selling off of the market, the declining of assets, the stocks that drop 2 or 3% or sometimes even more depending on how volatile it is in a day. Real estate doesn't do that. That's one of the nicest, most beautiful benefits of real estate is that if you buy real estate, it is such a slow-moving market that these upswings and downswings don't cause your house to drop 2 to 5% in a day like can happen in the stock market or crypto, for example. So real estate is such a great hedge against what may be going on in the rest of your financial life with that volatility because it's not going to experience the swings up and down in price. It just doesn't move like that. It's so slow moving. You're talking longer closings. It just takes so long for things to trickle into and impact real estate. So from a flight to safety perspective, you see real estate investors start an investment, pick up some during these situations because maybe they're allocating or reallocating their assets from the public markets and saying, okay, I'm not loving what's happening in the stock market right now. I'm not loving this volatility. Where can I put my money where there's still probably a pretty good gain in there, but I don't have these huge swings where it's up and it's down, and every time the president, posts something on X, that, the market drops 2%, or every time he goes on a speech and says that the war isn't really over yet, or it's going to be a few more weeks, and then the market gets crushed, your home value doesn't get impacted by that. So a lot of people acting and pulling away from real estate, they actually should be doing quite the opposite, because it doesn't have the same effect that people think that it does. People think, I don't want to buy a house now because the stock market's getting wrecked. That's actually the reason you should be buying a house or investing in real estate. You should be reallocating assets potentially if you're too heavy in the stock market in a period of volatility. And let's face it, the next few years under President Trump, they're going to continue to be volatile. There's just no question about it. He is a president of action, good or bad. I think mostly good, some bad. He's a president of action. So you're going to see this volatility, and it's going to cause the fear to kick in for people. So if you're an experienced investor or someone who just simply wants to move money out of the market because they're tired of that volatility, now is a great time to look at real estate. We've been in this period of time for the last few years where we've seen a little bit of appreciation. We're starting to see some appreciation again, not a ton. Sales are down and rates have gotten better. So it is building up. It's, there's a pent up kind of buildup that's happening with real estate, and I think this war in Iran is kind of holding it back a little bit more than it would have been had it not happened. Had it not happened, I think we could potentially see some more interest rate relief. I think inflation was heading in the right direction. We've got a new Fed chair coming in. I think that people were excited about housing. I think specifically in Tampa Bay, we're another year away from the bad hurricanes that we got. I feel like everything was heading in a really positive direction for real estate, but this is kind of that cloud that's hanging over the real estate market. It's going to cause some obstacles, but it is not based in fact or historical precedent that people should run away from real estate right now. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is a safe haven compared to the volatility of the stock market. So we know that President Trump has an agenda to juice the housing market. He has said it. He's made it clear that he wants a better real estate market. He wants to protect people's assets and protect their home values and create more home sales. We know he's very much involved with attempting to have some impact on interest rates as well as on housing policy. I think some of that is a little bit tabled right now. I think some of those things would have been in motion already, but can't really get rolling until the conflict in Iran, gets resolved. So like I mentioned, it's a psychological, emotional challenge to the real estate market, but it is a financial one too, because if it continues and gas prices rise, that does start to hurt people. It limits their debt to income ratio. Now they're incurring more expenses. Their money is going towards things that are more expensive than they were when they first looked at buying. And unfortunately, even interest rates have this volatility. So what I can tell you as a home buyer is take a step back and really think about why you're buying, and does the thesis of why you're buying, especially if you're buying for the long term, change because of the situation in Iran? Does the reason you're buying change? Most of the time that answer is no. And in fact, I think it is a wonderful safe haven that can provide people more stability in their financial world. So if you needed to take money out of the market, obviously maybe not on a really bad day, but if you needed to take money out of the market to put it into real estate, psychologically, I think you're going to see less of that. You're going to feel less of that up and down. And there are people that go through these volatile periods and they say, you know what, this is now a time for me to think about maybe buying some investment real estate because I'm tired of these fluctuations, these wild swings up and down. And I can tell you the wild swings up and down, they're going to continue. I mean, they just are. There's just no way around it. It's going to keep going in that direction. It's going to keep being volatile. I don't know how quickly Iran is going to get resolved. It's going to cause gas prices to rise. I don't know for how long. But again, the point is that if you're making a choice about buying or selling your home because of a war thousands of miles away, that realistically that asset has a very safe kind of protected bubble over it that some of the other markets don't have. It's more of a safe haven long term. So I also saw something recently because I people get a little bit fear mongered to death about real estate, especially anyone that grew up during the Great Recession. They say, "Oh, foreclosures are rising. Foreclosures are going to take over the war and the loss of labor and all these things." We had such a run up in prices that the majority and there's been so many cash sales that the majority of people. The majority of sales, people are in strong equity positions. The number of foreclosures right now is one-tenth what it was at peak. So we're not in some situation where we're dealing with a market crash, and Iran is certainly not going to crash our real estate market. So I am still very optimistic about what's coming with the Tampa real estate market. We've just got some things to get through. I think the second half of this year, we get through the conflict with Iran, so the kind of the emotional hangover goes away and inflation kind of gets reeled in. We see some rate cuts this year. We get through another safe hurricane season. I think later this year and then in 27, we're going to see some really, really healthy price appreciation and a much more balanced real estate market. That's my prediction. That's what I'm sticking to. So if you're a buyer or a seller right now and you're running away because of the conflict with Iran and the constant messaging of the mass media keeping you afraid, which is what it's supposed to do, so you keep watching and keep hearing the ads and advertisers keep paying, I would tell you to take a deep breath, take a step back, and evaluate whether or not the thesis for you buying or selling still makes sense, and it probably still does. So we'll be back after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show.
Back to the Duncan Duo Radio Show, the official real estate agents of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Top team in Tampa Bay, over $3 billion sold and counting. Now your host, Andrew Duncan.
So we're back here chatting about the real estate market. I talked in the first segment about the impact of the Iran war, oil prices, and the kind of the fluctuations and volatility in the stock market and its impact on real estate. What I want to talk about next, though, is kind of a more of a local approach to what we have going on. And so the real estate market kind of has different segments, no different than the stock market. If you look at the stock market, you might see a day where you're like, oh, the market's down, but chip stocks did great today. Or the market's up and Walmart and retail did bad, or kind of the traditional, the big seven, the Mag 7, they call them, Google, Amazon, maybe they had a great day, and then smaller, small companies and mid caps got crushed. So the real estate market is similar in terms of its asset classes as well as location. So when you hear things like, oh, prices didn't appreciate, okay, or home sales are down, you have to understand that is basically encapsulating all product types. That is, there is a massive difference between what is going on right now in our real estate market with single family homes versus condos. So when you see the statistic that says, oh, prices are down or inventory is higher, but you break that down per asset class and it changes a lot. So for example, single family home is still appreciating while condos are depreciating. We sell modest a couple percentage points year over year. We saw some zip codes, well-priced homes in South Tampa, West Chase, Carrollwood moving quickly, going above asking, prices accelerating. It really does depend on the product type that you're buying. You could say the stock market had a bad day, but then there's a sector that did really good. And I think you could say the same thing about our real estate market in Tampa Bay right now. There are parts of Tampa Bay that aren't performing as well as others. There are assets like single-family homes that are outperforming condos. There are townhomes that are kind of right in the middle. There's land, there's commercial real estate, and then, of course, there's coastal and luxury and average price points. When you segment off all of these, these asset classes within real estate, they're performing much differently. Probably the most disparity between the asset classes in my entire career, where different asset classes aren't performing the same as others because of unique things that have happened. And I want to talk about those. So I mentioned before, single family homes, price is still rising. You could look at the single family home market, and if you separated out all the condos and townhomes and just looked at single family homes, you'd say, man, that looks like a pretty healthy market right now. That there's appreciation, it's a balanced inventory, it's doing well. And then you add the townhomes. And townhomes perform a little bit better than condos because they can be financed at a higher loan to value, and you own the land. You have a little bit more control over the property than in a condo where you only own your internal walls. They're kind of the in between. That might look like also a balanced kind of even market. Then you look at condos and say, my goodness, it's getting crushed. High inventory, depreciation. Massive problems in certain communities where those communities are just getting smoked. Things like, insurance and engineering reports and rising HOA fees because people aren't paying or because the building has to be retrofitted to some of the new guidelines. So the condo market performing completely different than single family and townhomes. And it's really dragging all the averages down. So if you look at Tampa, you say, man, it's kind of, I don't know about the market. It doesn't seem to be doing great. If you average all the product types out, that's accurate. But if you took condos out, you'd say, man, that market's doing pretty good. On that same token, you can also divvy it up by price range. And one of the things I see going on in the current administration, you're seeing the wealth gap widen. Whether you like it or not, it appears to be that's what's happening. And so the luxury real estate market still kicking, still doing incredibly well. But then when you look at affordable and lower price point homes, not performing as well. So if you want to really know what's going on with your specific property type and neighborhood, you can't pay attention. You certainly can't pay attention to national stats, but you can't even pay attention to the stats coming out about Tampa because the product type matters. Just like if they said the Dow is up 1% today, but then semiconductor stocks and AI stocks got crushed. Or the NASDAQ is way up, but the Dow is down. Walmart had bad earnings or whatever happens in the world. It's the same thing happening with real estate right now. You're having this, more so than I've seen in my entire career, this disparity between product types in terms of how they're performing, how they can be financed, what the risk tolerance is, and then, of course, by price point as well. Certainly, the storms had some impact on that. Some things happening in other parts of the country with the luxury market, things like, some of the draconian taxes in New York and California are driving people to Florida. And then, of course, the overpopulation of Miami is driving people to Tampa. They go down, they look at Miami, they see the prices, and they're like, man, this is crazy. It's packed. And then they look at Tampa. We look like a bargain. So our luxury market is going to continue to outperform, I think, the next few years just because, again, that's the momentum and that's the direction everything is headed. And the statistics and the data, kind of show us how those different product types are performing. And if you want to know what's going on with your specific property type, we worked with a technology partner called Fellow, and Fellow brings in the data from all of the major home value websites. So if you've looked at any of these websites, if you've looked at your home value, our site has that data as blended, though, with a bunch of other sources. We believe we have the most accurate statistical data so that you can know what's going on, whether prices are rising in your neighborhood, whether they're dropping, whether you got foreclosures, whether you got high inventory, whatever your product type is. If you're in a condo building and you want to know what's going on, are people behind, are they delinquent, all of that and more. And you can do that at duncanduo.com. You fill out a quick form, you get the information, and it saves you time. It's using AI features that are pulling the data from bunches of sites so that you don't have to go to each one and compare and contrast to figure out which one's right. We have the most accurate data. We're pulling all that data in. And again, you can do that yourself at duncanduo.com to know what's going on in your neighborhood, with your house, with your condo building, with your townhome community, with your luxury waterfront property. All of those things, you can get a grasp on what's going on with your specific property type within this market at duncanduo.com. And we'll be back. We're going to continue this conversation after a quick break.
And we're back with the Duncan Duo Radio Show, Tampa Bay's #1 real estate team. Over $3 billion in sales, thousands of happy clients, and official partners of the Lightning. Now your host, Andrew Duncan.
So we're back talking about Tampa Bay real estate. You know, I talked in the first couple segments about the impact of the Iran war on real estate, and then I kind of carried through with how kind of what is happening within the different subsets of the real estate market in Tampa Bay, because it just varies widely. I'll have somebody call in and think prices are dropping, and in their neighborhood they're not. Or they'll think that their condo building is worth more, their condo is doing great, even though there's massive amounts of inventory on the market. But I want to share some good news with you about Tampa Bay real estate. I mentioned this, I've talked about this a lot, that I'm obviously very bullish about real estate. I can't be in this business for 20 plus years and not think optimistically about the direction that it's going. And I think the second half of this year, we're going to see a boom. I think we were going to see it in the spring. I think we'll certainly see an impact, a positive increase in the spring with sales and prices, but not as much as we would have, because unfortunately, the hangover from the Iran war and the volatility it causes will definitely knock some buyers back onto the fence. So I think the second half of this year, once we get that out of the way and maybe some rate relief, we're going to start to see that boom environment again, where prices are rising, where people are buying, where more people are buying, more people are selling, and I think that carries us into 27. But I want to talk about a couple of local things that are wins for why I am so optimistic about the real estate market, seeing improvement after the Iran war. The first thing is some of the huge insurance wins going on right now. So Governor DeSantis led a charge and really pushed to try and control insurance costs, because that is one of the biggest complaints we get from customers, insurance and taxes, right? So we'll talk about taxes. We'll talk about some of the exciting stuff happening there. But from insurance, 8.7% average cuts this spring from Citizens. Statewide savings up to $650 million, according to the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association. They announced on March 4th to kill the 1% emergency fee on policies by October 1. 26 instead of 2028. It's a massive for Tampa affordability, lowering carrying costs, meaning more buyers can qualify and sellers can net more. So when the real estate market booms, and the biggest upswings that we've ever seen in our real estate market, well, the first one that was really unexpected was COVID. Now, COVID happened for a couple reasons. One, people were stuck in their homes more, so they had to be more conscientious about the environment they lived in. So they wanted to improve that. Two, you saw a massive, kind of printing of money, truthfully. You saw a juicing of the economy by, PPP money and some of these free, kind of loans that people use to be able to fund their businesses and then kind of get through. And then the biggest part of that was record low interest rates. And because we hadn't had any of the storms in Tampa Bay, we had record low rates and we had relatively affordable insurance. So our market just mooned, right? Well, now we're seeing some of those same things start to move in the right direction. Buyers and the real estate market massively moves based on payments, based on the payment that they have to pay. And their payment is encapsulated for most people, unless you take them out of escrow and pay them directly. Your payment is including your taxes and your insurance and your mortgage, which is your interest rate. Well, interest rates for the last few years have been higher than they are now. So interest rates have come down, AKA payments have come down. Second part of that conversation is insurance. Just like what I talked about, because we're another year past the storms, and hopefully we have another year or two of clean, no major hurricane impacts, we have another drop in people's payments. And then the next segment of that is something I'm going to talk about. I've talked about it on the show before, but if you look at how most buyers buy based on payment, not on price, because they're looking at what they can afford and they don't have the money saved that you might think that they do. It's very payment driven. Taxes. It has been a complaint for a long time in Florida that our property taxes are too high, that there aren't enough exemptions, that people are gouged on taxes, that, again, it's been out there. And there is a massive push to have, what could be some incredible reform in Tampa and in Florida about property taxes. If this lines up, okay, which again, so if you think about what we see happening, the Iran war gets done sometime soon, hopefully a few weeks maybe. Then you have a new Fed chair that is pretty much had to assure President Trump that he's going to cut rates or he wouldn't have been appointed. So we're going to see a drop in the Fed rate. Then you've got insurance prices that are coming down. If we avoid hurricane season this year and we end up getting on the ballot in November, an amendment to the Constitution that would require a 60% vote that has a good chance at passing, that massively reforms, reduces, or maybe even for some people eliminates non-school homestead property taxes. All those things line up to a robust recovery in real estate. I think the second half of the year will be very good, and I think 27 will be potentially another boom. If we see rates get down into the fours, we abolish or reduce property taxes, we keep cutting it insurance rates, and again, knock on wood, we avoid hurricane season, our real estate market is going to skyrocket. It's just history has told us that. Now, again, there's some things that could not work out. Maybe the bill doesn't pass for dropping taxes, or maybe maybe the Fed doesn't. Maybe inflation picks back up and the Fed can't cut rates as much. But I believe all of those things line up to a very juiced economy in the second half of this year and in 2027, where we will see prices rising again, a lot more home sales, and a better performing real estate market. All the national economic things point to that, but again, affordability is the biggest point of that. So if we see affordability improvement on rates, we see affordability improvement on insurance, we see affordability improvement on taxes. Florida continues to be a target for people to move to because of our lack of state income taxes. The Iran war gets out of the way, and a clean hurricane season. All of those things point to a massive boom that I think will be incredible for real estate. I don't think we'll get to COVID, kind of the COVID ramp up levels, but I do believe we will see a considerable increase in home sales. I think we'll see a considerable increase in relocation. It's really never been more polarizing in terms of people moving based on politics. But it is that now. We hear it from people all the time. They moved from a liberal state to Florida because they want to be around or in an economy and environment that thinks like they think. People are moving and vote, based on politics more than they ever have before. COVID started it and really kind of, really exploded it. And I think we continue to see that trend. Florida is going to continue to be a red state. The numbers are pretty insurmountable at this point. And, you're going to get people from these states that continue to go further left moving here because of all of those benefits. But again, there are some things that could, fail in that regard. Maybe we do get hit with more bad hurricanes. Maybe the tax bill doesn't pass. I think there's a really good chance it does pass because here's what I think. I think Governor DeSantis knows it's a legacy play for him. Getting that done and on the ballot and passed is something he'll be able to celebrate as he continues to pursue likely national political office. I think that the impact of that is important, but I think that the House and the Senate in Florida and Governor DeSantis are going to do a lot of homework to make sure they put a bill out there that can pass the 60%. Because they know if they look, there's no secret that if they put on a bill that says, taxes are getting abolished for everybody tomorrow, look, there's no free lunch. A lot of the local cities, counties, and communities depend on that tax money for, police and schools and different things. However, if they do some scaling out so that then they can scale up other things or find Doge level cuts in expenses or, they look for other savings. If they can scale it like that and maybe start with the most affordable homes up to the most expensive, some sort of scaling of that, I think we'll get enough people comfortable enough to pass it, enough homeowners and the people that vote to pass it in a 60%, constitutional majority that's needed. So that is what I believe will happen. I think, again, the wild card in all of that is it passing, and then us staying clean for hurricane. But if all these things line up, if we get a clean hurricane season, if we get a new Fed chair and rate cuts, Rates drop, like they're hovering in the five. You can get into the fives now with government-backed mortgages. You get some relief on insurance costs, and then last but not least, you get massive relief on property taxes. Our real estate market will crush. And the other thing is that you'll have more money moving into Florida. People that are wealthy look at taxes as their biggest expense, and they have to decide, does the tax that they pay in the area that they live in, does that expense that they incur give them a value exchange? Do they look at the state and local taxes they pay in New York or in California and say, it's worth it for me to keep living here? And I think the math is showing us that there are enough of them that are saying, no, it's not. I mean, just this past week, I saw the chairman and founder of Starbucks moved to Miami. Enormous hedge funds that had always been in Cali moved. Tech companies looking at Miami as the new hub. There's just going to be a continued movement of people because they don't like, I think Doge and then, like Nick Shirley and some of these investigators have exposed the level of corruption that wealthy people look at that expensive taxes and they don't believe that the government is a good steward of the money. They don't believe that the local government is taking that money and spending it on, something other than, ridiculous pet projects. They don't believe that it's really providing impact or benefit. They think it's just a waste and a drain on their ability to grow businesses and employment and reinvest in their companies. So I think you're going to continue to see that movement of wealth to Florida, which again creates jobs, brings people here. If all this keeps lining up and we get a massive increase in property taxes, imagine 10 years down the line, some of these people that are buying homes that have 100,000 plus annual tax bills. 200,000 plus, 300,000 plus, especially if you get into the mansion level of Miami. So imagine that goes away. That's money that they now have in their pocket, in addition to not having a state income tax. In addition to, the pro-business environment, that's money they can reinvest in their businesses, that they can hire more people, they can buy more technology, not just have it go away. So my belief is if those things all do line up, we get, all of that, we are going to see a massive boom in the Tampa Bay and Florida real estate markets that we haven't seen since COVID. Our real estate market will moon. And especially, when I talk about the luxury market, people misunderstand this because they say, oh, well, that market doesn't really impact me. I'm going to buy an average priced home. It doesn't matter. It does matter because they're bringing money here. They're bringing jobs. They're bringing their facilities and their headquarters here. They're spending money in the local economy. But here's the part a lot of people miss. If they're buying let's just start at the top. Let's just say somebody's buying a $30 million mansion, okay? Well, it's likely that the guy buying the $30 million mansion is selling his $15 million mansion to somebody. As you trickle down, there are sales at $1 million, $500,000 that trickle, that if those sales don't happen, the person doesn't move up to the next price point. It creates buyers. So even if you think it's just going to be concentrated wealthy people, it's not. It absolutely does have other sales happen in real estate because of those higher price transactions that wouldn't happen otherwise, because that guy selling his $10 million needs to sell his $10 million to buy a $20 million and so on and so forth. And that goes down all the way to where somebody's having to sell their 500 to buy $1 million. Well, if they don't buy the $1 million, the 500 never sells. So again, those extra transactions get created no matter how you look at it. That's my belief. That's what I think is coming to Tampa Bay real estate. And if you need some help with it, with positioning, with evaluating what your choices are, whether you buy, whether you sell, and when, hit us up at duncanduo.com. And I'll be back after a quick break here on WFLA News.
Back to the Duncan Duo Radio Show, hosted by Andrew Duncan, official real estate agents of the Tampa Bay Lightning and the team that guarantees your home sells with ease. Visit theduncanduo.com right now. Here's Andrew Duncan.
Wrapping up our last segment here, talking real estate in Tampa Bay. I covered the impact of real estate from the Iran war, the potential boom coming to real estate in Tampa Bay later this year and next year. And I want to talk next to the real estate agents that are out there thinking about making a change. One of the things that I have, that I have the privilege of providing to my team is, decades of experience going through these ups and downs in the market. And through that time, I continue to stay consistent with spending money to generate leads. So if you're an agent out there that's struggling on transactions, you're not getting enough leads, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to generate leads for our agents. We help our agents invest in real estate. We help our agents grow to higher price points, to helping buyers, to helping sellers, pretty much all the way across the spectrum of real estate. We have a role for you and an opportunity to grow. So if you are looking for a change, if you're looking for a change of broker or of leadership, or if you're thinking about getting into real estate, I've always believed that the best time to get into the real estate market isn't when it's high flying and crazy and all that, because that exposes bad habits to where when the market corrects, a lot of those people get crushed. And there are a lot of them right now, and I'm sorry if it's you, but there are a lot of them that experienced that, got into real estate when it was hot, thought it was always going to be hot, and now they're struggling because they don't know how to adapt. So getting in at that time, unfortunately, creates bad habits to where when the market corrects or adjusts or stabilizes, a lot of those agents fail out and they get out of the business. Why the failure rate in real estate is so high. So we attempt to combat that with obviously increased advertising and lead generation and marketing, extra coaching, role playing, and just providing more and more tools for our agents to be able to thrive and survive. We're very AI heavy. I think one of the most AI heavy, teams locally in terms of using AI to communicate with our leads and for our agents to get better and more productive. And, I just think that is the way that it's going. I've said it repeatedly on the air before. I don't believe AI replaces real estate agents. I believe the real estate agents that massively use AI to their advantage will put out of business the ones that don't. So AI isn't going to replace you as a real estate agent, but the real estate agent that knows how to adapt and use AI will. And if you're not getting that coaching and training and that push, I told my team this week, hey, look, whatever your favorite AI bot is, look at some of the other ones, make sure that you've got the right one, and then use it, and use it a lot. It teaches you. It's your own personal assistant. Get good at it. Your customers using it. There are way too many real estate agents to this day still don't even know how to use some of the major, AI tools. So we're incorporating and training and coaching across that, helping our agents grow despite the market, continuing to spend money on advertising and lead generation because we know a boom is coming. So if you're someone that wants to learn about how to invest, how to build wealth, how to grow as an agent, how to maybe go from working with buyers to working with sellers, or working with regular price, average, priced homes to luxury homes, all of those things are there and an opportunity for you. And we would love to work with you. How to contact us? Hit us up on any of our socials. You can go to @TheDuncanDuo, just Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, @TheDuncanDuo. You can also go to jointheduo.com, where you can apply for open positions. You can also set an appointment to have a confidential private consultation with us where we'll talk about our team. And look, we're not right for everybody. If you're an agent that doesn't really want to work and you want money to rain from the ceiling, we're probably not the right one for you. I didn't build my career, my wealth by sitting around and waiting for it to rain. You got to go out and get it. If you're somebody that wants to go out and get it, we want to work with you. We want to coach and teach you. Even if you have no experience, but you just have the right attitude, we would love the opportunity to talk to you. Again, we are in growth mode. We're looking to add a handful more agents to the team. And you can apply again at jointheduo.com. Last but not least, look, I talked about in the first segment about the Iran war and how that impacts real estate. Look, there's some people out there where an increase in gas prices and possible inflation are going to cause some financial problems for some families. If you own a home and your interest rate is 7 or higher, or even high 6s, depending on the type of product, even probably mid 6s in some instances, you should definitely look at doing a streamlined refinance if you have a VA or an FHA mortgage. You can do this at citywidetampa.com. Again, that's citywidetampa.com. Could save you hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars a year by lowering your interest rate. Now, a streamlined refinance with VA or FHA, they're called different at each companies, but I'm just going to kind of group it in and call it a streamline. If you do one of those refinances, it just simply lowers your rate and your payment. You don't have to qualify the same way as you do. So if if your mortgage is, if the amount that you owe, if you're not in an equity position, or if you don't have employment right now, the qualification process is much different than if you're buying a home. It is very much a streamline to lower your interest rate. If you have a higher interest rate than that, please go to citywidetampa.com. You can talk to Melissa, Morgan, or Oscar in my mortgage partner's office. They'll look at your situation and come up with solutions to try and help you get to a place where you can lower your payments and maybe be able to afford the impact that potentially inflation or increased gas prices could have. Also options to potentially, even with different products, maybe even tap some of your equity. So if you need a loan, if you're in a tough spot, please go to citywidetampa.com, and my team there would be glad to help you, with your mortgage refinancing needs to see if it makes sense. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes we say, hey, look, no, you should wait till the next Fed rate cut, or you've got a little bit of time, or let's kind of monitor rates, because rates do fluctuate, especially when the world's volatile like it is right now with the war. You see rates drop, you see them go up. It's just the natural process that happens when people are experiencing that fear. So nonetheless, great opportunity to refinance. Again, you can do that at citywidetampa.com. And if you're a real estate agent looking for a change, you want to learn how to invest, you want to build wealth, you want to become a better agent, you want to grow and be held accountable. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're not getting the leads that you want to get. Maybe you don't like I know some of the programs out there where you're giving away such a large portion of the commission. Maybe you're looking for an opportunity to not pay as much of the commission split on your deals. Again, we'd love the opportunity. Join theduo.com or at the Duncan Duo on any of our social channels. And we hope you have an awesome rest of your weekend, Tampa Bay. Thanks for tuning in.